Today I'm revealing my personal top 5 and bottom 5 Sims 4 expansion packs. I've done tier lists before, but I've done these for the purposes of you guys to try and help you guys understand what I think are the best and worst packs for you to get. But everybody obviously has their own different play styles, so I really wanted to talk about my personal play style right now and how these impact what packs I do or don't like playing with. And this is something that does change over time, which is why maybe I've done a video like this maybe last year or the year before, but the meta always changes, so does the top 5 and bottom 5 expansion pack ranking. At 5th place we have Get to Work. If you were to ask me last year, I probably would have put Get to Work in my top 3, and that's just because I found the live careers fun. I say the live careers plural, but what I really mean is just the scientist career, because the other two careers aren't very good. EA definitely put all of their eggs in one basket in terms of the scientist thing, and everything else kind of felt like an afterthought. But I do still find myself coming back to it now and then, and I do find it very fun to play with. But the key thing for me with Get to Work is the retail system. Granted, retail doesn't really work that well in The Sims 4. I just like the ability to shop, and I like the ability to make shops. Normally I like to make shops which sell things that you couldn't ordinarily buy from build mode. So if you craft something on the woodworking bench, you can't really purchase that in build mode. The only way to get it is to either make it yourself or cheat. It's exactly the same with the spellcaster potions from Realm of Magic, or any kind of craftable really, like flower arranging in seasons. I like to make shops that represent the things that you can't ordinarily buy. I do rarely ever play in live mode these days, but when I do, I usually like to play rotationally. I don't like to create a new save just for one specific household. I like to hop in and out of different households in the same save. So I might have one sim that is crafting potions with Realm of Magic, but if I have a sim who lives in another household which could probably do with a potion, I can take them to the potion shop. A lot of sims in my personal save file own shops. The only reason why I would say it's 5th, not at the top, is because unfortunately it's very buggy. I would also say that the live careers get a little bit repetitive. Like once you've done it once, you've done it and you don't really need to go back. So that's the only reason why it's at 5, but I still like it. In 4th place we have The Sims 4 Cottage Living. Originally I would have put this one a lot higher because I do think it completely changes the way that you play the game, especially with the self-sufficient simple living thing. Unfortunately, gardening for me personally has just got more and more broken over time, and one of the core principles of Cottage Living is the gardening aspect of it, and because it just doesn't really work very well anymore growing your own crops, I just find it more frustrating these days to play with. I also find it really annoying getting notifications for the Finchwick Fair festivals even when I'm not living in the Cottage Living world. Cottage Living was a really fun gimmick for me for a couple of years, but it just started to get a little bit samey and tedious after a while. Having said that though, I do still really appreciate the fact that it does give you a completely new way to play the game. I also use the stuff from the pack a lot when I'm building. I also really enjoy building in the world too. I think it's a lot of fun. Obviously I'm biased as a British person. It's nice to have a British inspired world, even though it doesn't really represent British culture in the best way. We've at least got a bit there, so that's why I personally like it. At number 3 we have City Living. City Living was the first major expansion pack that I bought, and I bought it alongside Seasons at the exact same time. I think City Living festivals are the only in-game festivals which are actually fun. No other packs that come with festivals have ever made them fun in my opinion, apart from City Living. I also like the idea of living in apartments, although you can't customize them fully. I like working within the restrictions of them when I'm building. I also really like it for build mode, and I use its stuff a lot, especially for community builds, because these days I like building a lot more than doing anything else. So for me it's just a really great pack for that. I think the world itself is just a nice vibe, and whenever I play as a new household I usually like to have them start off in the city when I play as like a single sim household, and then if I want to turn it into a family of sim situation then I'll move them to more of a family friendly white picket fence world. But for me the City Living world San Myshuno was just a nice starting point for a lot of my sims, so that's why I really enjoy it. At number 2 we have have Get Together. Now, as I was saying before about liking build mode a lot lately, in my personal opinion, Get Together is the #1 fundamental pack for builders. You may disagree, but that's my personal opinion. I personally think every builder should have Get Together. I use the stuff from it all the time. It has so many different functions. I also really love building in the world because it's got 4 main areas. It's got so many lots. You've got the countryside area if you want to do some more traditional builds. You've then got the rich people island, which has so many creative possibilities. And then you've got the old-fashioned town center, which I think looks really nice. There's so many build possibilities. And then you've got the more modern harbor area where you can put loads of community lots. I just think it's a really great pack for building. And because I like building so much lately, I just find I feel really creative when I want to build stuff in that world. In terms of gameplay, I don't really use the clubs feature that much anymore. I find it a little bit finicky to set up. For me, I would say this is just an amazing pack for building. And because I love building so much lately, I love this pack so much lately too. At #1, we have For Rent. Now, you might be very surprised if you've watched my previous videos about For Rent because it's the most buggy and glitchy expansion pack released over the last few years. When I say the core gameplay features of this pack don't work, I mean the core features. If you like the idea of being a landlord and owning apartments that you can rent out, I'm sorry, you're not going to get paid as a landlord, which defeats the whole point. The landlord and tenant events are very broken and they don't work very well. I find the world itself very, very lifeless and boring. The only reason why I like this pack is because I personally like building the new residential rentals lot type. These days, I'm just so done with gameplay. If you've watched any of my recent Let's Plays, every single time I've done a Let's Play or any kind of gameplay video, there's always been some kind of game-breaking bug or glitch, at least one, something that gets in the way and totally breaks the immersion. I just enjoy building these days. So with this pack, I find it a lot more fun being able to make trailer parks, being able to make big apartment complexes, and because of the way the game is coded, they actually function properly, and that's why I really enjoy it because I find The Sims 4 has so many big lots, and with this pack it basically allows you to break up the lots into smaller lots within the same space, and I just feel like it has a really great function. As this is a super personal top 5 pack list, I'm not really thinking about how much money the packs cost because I've got to get them anyway because I'm a Sims YouTuber, whether I like it or not. So maybe if you're thinking about the cost of packs and maybe it's not worth it because you could technically build apartment complexes without this pack, you'll just not have them function correctly in live mode unless you own something like MC Command Center. But for me personally, I just really love building lately and I like building apartment complexes or maisonettes or terrace houses together. It's just very functional for me. The gameplay is horrendous, always will be horrendous, but I just really like it for build mode. Next up, we're looking at my bottom 5, with 5 being the least hated and #1 being the most hated. Starting off at number 5, we have the Seasons pack. A lot of people consider Seasons to be like the #1 fundamental pack in your game to give you a sense of time, and for that I completely agree. As The Sims 4 is pay to win, I do feel like Seasons is a necessary pack, but these days I just find myself finding Seasons a little bit annoying. When I first got it, I thought, oh, it makes all of the worlds look really unique and different. It makes everything look a lot more pretty. But these days I just find the Sims 4 default Seasons holidays really annoying every single time that they pop up. I also find it so annoying when it rains because it just rains all the time in the game and I don't know why. I find it a little bit annoying as well, like when it snows and it's like summer in real life. I just find it a little bit annoying. I kind of wish you'd be able to sync the Seasons pack with a real life calendar, kind of like they do in Animal Crossing. I think that would be amazing, but obviously something like that would never happen in The Sims 4. I just feel like these days it's just something that's more just a little bit annoying and kind of gets in the way more than something that I enjoy. At number 4, we have Island Living. This is one of those packs that doesn't really feel like it has much purpose or depth to me. Island Living for me is probably the biggest pack for highlighting all of the fundamental core issues with The Sims 4. For example, the fact that The Sims 4 is so disjointed meant that the Island Living world couldn't ship with a nice island restaurant or an island spa. These are things that came with, you know, The Sims 2 Bon Voyage, for example, which had restaurants and spas in its sunny island world, but we don't have that in The Sims 4 because the pack system is so disjointed and it just makes me feel very dissatisfied. The fact that The Sims 4 doesn't have an open world system is just also very apparent in this pack, especially considering that it comes with like jet skis or boats, which you don't really use. You can't really use to do anything because there's nowhere for your Sims to go in the water because they're limited by a very small plot of land. The pack comes with a couple of little islands, but you can't build on them. There's nothing there. There's nothing to do, so they don't need to exist. In The Sims 3 Island Paradise, we got underwater scuba diving, we got hotels. Granted, houseboats that came with The Sims 3 Island Paradise make them incredibly buggy and glitchy. If you actually remove every single houseboat from the world and do a couple of other tweaks, the Island Paradise pack is actually not glitchy at all and it runs really well. And that's with the hotels that you can run and manage and own, or you could just stay in. That's with underwater scuba diving. I just feel like Island Living didn't go far enough, and that's because it couldn't go far enough because of the core issues with The Sims 4. And I just feel like it wasn't ambitious enough and probably couldn't be ambitious, so it shouldn't have been made. At number 3, we have cats and dogs. This one highlights the issue to me of The Sims 4 also being very disjointed, but being very, I guess, stingy. Of course, in previous Sims games, we just had a pets pack which came with all pets, not just pets, but also NPC animals that you'd find roaming around in the wild. And The Sims 4 cats and dogs literally just does come with cats and dogs. It comes with a vet's career, which is very buggy. There's basically no gameplay for cats and dogs in this pack. Like, it comes with the obstacle course things that you can use for cats and dogs, but it's incredibly buggy and glitchy and it doesn't really work as intended. There are so many different things they could have done, so many possibilities and routes they could have gone down with this, but the reason why I resent it so much is because they decided to not make a pets pack and instead just have cats and dogs isolated, but they didn't overcompensate for that by giving us richer, more detailed gameplay. Instead, it was even shallower than pets in The Sims 2 and 3, even than in The Sims 1. The Sims 1 pets genuinely had more depth, and that's just shocking to me. But controversially, Cats and Dogs is one of the most popular expansion packs, which I just find adds to the whole lore, adds to the controversy, makes it even worse for me. At number 2, we have Horse Ranch. Horse Ranch is like Cats and Dogs, but on steroids. It is literally so much worse. Take the cash grabbiness and shallowness from Cats and Dogs and times it by 100, and then you have Horse Ranch. Not only are horses very buggy and glitchy, they don't have any gameplay, just like the obstacle course that came with Cats and Dogs. The ones in Horse Ranch don't really do anything. You can't actually set up a course for your horses. They used to just gallop around the same thing over and over again in a circle. The horsing competitions are a rabbit hole with no input from yourself as a player in terms of what happens. Again, The Sims 3 I had horses just put in the general pets pack, and that one even came with unicorns. Even the actual horse racing, it was a rabbit hole in The Sims 3 too, but it had a little bit more depth to it. The Sims 4 Horse Ranch pack genuinely is just one of the most shallow packs I've ever seen. It's definitely made me realize that EA have really given up and they just don't really have that much passion for The Sims 4 anymore. Like, it's so obvious. It was just a very big disappointment. At number 1, we have High School Years. Over the last few years, The Sims 4 has gone very steeply downhill in terms of its pack quality, but High School Years was definitely, I would say, the first expansion pack to show that real drop in quality. I think the actual world that came with the pack is an okay idea. I like that it comes with this whole kind of harborside fairground and actually something to do in the outside world. But because of the way the Sims 4 is set up, it's always very dead and empty in there, and it really breaks the immersion. I think the bubble tea shop thrift store mechanic of the game was not very well thought through. The Harbour Town thing wasn't thought through. The actual high school itself wasn't very well thought through. It's one of those cases where it's like it's a nice idea on paper. It's just the way it was implemented wasn't very skilled. In fact, did you know that technically you actually have more gameplay sending your Sims to school as a rabbit hole than you do actually going to school with them? You know, when you send your Sims to a rabbit hole like school or work, you can click on your Sim and you can choose whether, you know, for work, it's like socialize with co-workers, work hard, take it easy. There are actually more options on that dial for sending your Sims to school than there are actually options for things to do when you actually take them to school, meaning that the base game school system is honestly a little bit more in depth than actually sending them to school, which is insane. It's very buggy and glitchy. The classes are literally just Sims sitting there performing a writing animation. You don't actually have any input for them in class. The pack comes with this big school field, but you can't actually use it. And the most horrific thing for me is that you have final exams and prom every single in-game week, and there's no option to tweak it. Absolutely nothing in this pack was thought through. It's just a really big mess, and it's a shame because Simmers have always said ever since the Sims 2 era, we want to be able to take our Sims to school. And finally we got that in the Sims 4, and it was just such a flop, and I just think it's such a shame. And as I said before, it was like the first point where expansion packs just started sloping severely downhill, and ever since the Sims 4 just hasn't really recovered. If you're curious about any of the packs I've mentioned in more detail, I have a brutally honest review series, so maybe you want to check out one of these 2 videos here. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching my personal top and bottom 5 list. I will see you in the next one.